Okay, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started here. Welcome to the April Teamstudio TLCC webinar. Thanks for joining us today, as we also welcome our guest speaker, Mark Roden, who will be presenting on jQuery comes to XPages. If you hear anything you like, feel free to share this with others on social media. Don't forget to mention us. All of our Twitter handles, they're here on this first page. So at Teamstudio, at TLCC Limited, LTD, and at Marky Roden. So feel free to do that on Twitter or Facebook or other social media channels. My name is Talim Badrukian. I'm the marketing director at Teamstudio. And I'm joined today by Howard Greenberg and Paul Delanevia from TLCC, and of course Mark Roden, our presenter. On the agenda today, I'll be taking a few moments to tell you about Teamstudio, who we are and what we do. I'll then be passing the controls to Howard at TLCC so he can do the same, and then we'll get Mark to dive right in. Before we get started here, a few administrative things to cover. We have over 430 people registered for this event. You may only see yourself, and that's only to protect attendee privacy, so the attendee list is not public. You're all muted during the session, so participation will be through the chat window and the Q&A panel. We're doing Q&A at the end of the session. You're welcome to ask your questions at any point in the Q&A panel, and we'll get to it once the formal presentation has concluded. This session is being recorded, and the link will be sent to you in a follow-up email later this week. So a little bit about Teamstudio, brief introduction and possibly a refresher for some of you who joined our webinars in the past. Teamstudio may have assisted you in the past with application development. We've been delivering innovative developer tools and developer productivity tools to the Notes and Dominoes community since 1996, specializing in source code control, version management, and source code management. So we've moved into the mobile application area in 2010 with Unplugged. Unplugged gives you the ability to extend your Notes application out to mobile devices. This is something new to check out if you haven't done already, considering a majority of the world and companies are moving to mobile today. So on the next slide here, a little bit more about Unplugged. As I mentioned, you're able to extend your application to mobile devices. And the unique thing about Unplugged is that it leverages the powerful technology of XPages and provides really a more native app experience for the user. These apps also have the capability to function when offline, so that's a huge value add for most of our existing customers. We're very proud to have been the recipient of the IBM Collaboration Solutions Award at the Connect conference earlier this year, and this product is available, the Unplugged product is available on the major mobile platforms, BlackBerry, Android, and iOS. In addition to the Unplugged platform, which allows clients to create custom mobile applications that meet their own specifications, we've recently produced an application called Teamstudio Continuity, which is a hosted solution. It's a production-ready application for business continuity. Teamstudio Continuity allows users to import their plans, their crisis emergency plans, call tree, among other things, directly into the mobile device, so that this information is available for them if their connectivity becomes compromised, which is frequently the case when a major incident happens. Teamstudio Continuity also works on all the major platforms. So we're very active in supporting the user group activities that take place in our community. We'll be at IMLUG on May 6th and 7th in St. Louis. And as an extension of IMLUG, we're also hosting a Hackathon Day on May 8th. Our Hackathon Day is an introduction to developing mobile apps with XPages. You can find a link to sign up for this event on the IMLUG site or right on the teamstudio.com homepage in the events column. And one last note here about our May webinar with Mike McGarrell and Paul Withers. They'll be covering 12 tasks made easier with IBM Lotus Domino XPages. You can find a link to sign up for this event on the teamstudio.com homepage as well. So next here, I'd like to pass the presentation on to Howard so he can talk a little bit about TLCC. So Howard, I'm just going to hand over the controls here to you.
Okay, thank you, Talim.
Okay.
And thank you. Hopefully you're seeing my slides coming up.
Yep, I do. I see your slides.
Okay, and as Colleen mentioned, my name is Howard Greenberg, and along with my partner here at TLCC, Paul Delanebbia, we're going to be your host today, and we'll be helping with the Q&A at the end. So a little bit about our next webinar. Colleen mentioned it. Paul and Mike presented this at Connect, and we sat in on it, both Paul Delanebbia and myself, and they really take a real fun look at 12 things that will make your life easier when you're developing XPages. And it's a real neat way. I'm not going to kind of give away their approach at this. If you look at the title, you might get a little tip on what they're going to kind of cover, or their approach to it, I should say. But it's a lot of fun the way they do it, and plus I think you're going to learn something. Of these 12 things, at least half will be something that will help you in your day-to-day development activities. So you can sign up. There's a link on the slide, tlcc.com/xpages-webinar, and you'll also get these slides, and there'll be a link from there as well. On that same page, you can get a link to all our previous webinars, and so you can view any of the webinars we've done over the last couple of years. A little bit about TLCC. We have been developing Notes and Domino courses since 1997, and that's basically all we do. We just participate in the Notes and Domino area. We have 7 XPages courses right now for both 8.5 and 9.0 versions of those courses. And our latest course is called Rapid XPages Development Using the Application Layout and Dojo UI Controls. Quite a long title, but that course takes a really deep dive into a lot of the controls that are now included in Domino 9 that will let you build a real nice looking and highly functional XPages site. Things like the dialog controls, the in-place form, the application layout control to create one layout that's going to work for all of your applications. A lot of the things that deal with the user interface creation are included now, built right into Domino 9. And so this course covers how to use those controls. And really highly suggest this course for anyone who's kind of gotten started with XPages, but they're kind of struggling with how to make their applications look good and work good. All our courses are self-paced, so you can learn anywhere. We have customers in over 80 countries around the world. And they also include instructor support via an integrated discussion database. We also come on site and can do private classes, or we can do private classes online as well. And we also offer mentoring services where we can help you to kind of take that knowledge that you learned in the courses as you start to actually create your applications and provide some extra guidance. TLCC will also be at IMLUG. First of all, for those of you who are not familiar with IMLUG, this is a great 2-day event that has a great price. It's free. There's a lot of great speakers on the agenda, and that's May 6th and 7th. And last I heard, there were a few spots left, but not many. So if you're interested, you can go to the URL at the bottom of the screen, imlug.org. As Colleen mentioned, both Teamstudio and TLCC are both doing hackathons the day after. Now these are both $495. Teamstudio is doing one on mobile XPages, and TLCC is going to do one on that course that I mentioned. We're going to spend a day going through a lot of the key topics in that 3-day course. So the instructor for that will be Paul Delanebbia. Say hello, Paul.
Hello, everyone. Really looking forward to seeing some of you at IMLUG.
And thanks, Paul. Yeah, and so Paul's been hard at work the last week or so preparing for that, and I think the attendees are going to get a great 1 day of training, and in addition they get to take home the TLCC course, which by itself costs $899. So you get all that for just $495. It's a great deal. Okay, so about the Q&A, Colleen mentioned that. The Q&A panel, you're welcome to ask your questions as Mark is going through his presentation. There should be a Q&A button at the ribbon at the top of your WebEx software that's on your desktop. If you don't see it, there's a little down arrow to the right of that ribbon, right where my mouse pointer is pointing. And if you don't see that Q&A button, use the down arrow and the option for Q&A will be there. Once you open the Q&A panel, you'll have an ability to ask a question. You should ask it to all panelists. And what we're going to do is take your questions at the end. So we will respond to your questions verbally, and Paul and I will host your questions and ask Mark the questions as they, and we'll probably go in order as they come up. Okay, so your presenter today, doctor, and yes, he is a doctor, Marky Roden, and Mark has a PhD in chemistry. So why is he not a chemist? Well, one day over some beers at Connect or a conference somewhere you should ask him, but he loves programming. And so that's what he's going to talk to you about today, is using jQuery and XPages. Mark has a blog, domino.com, which he has talked about using jQuery for probably well over a year and has a lot of great articles on there. And his presentation that he's going to do today is, I think, pretty much the same one he did at Connect back in January, and it was very well attended and very well received to an overflowing crowd. So Mark, I'm going to pass controls over to you once I find the right place. Let's see. Hopefully, Mark, you're getting the option to...
I am now the presenter. And share my screen. Let me know when you can see me.
There we go, Mark. It's up now. We see your screen.
Excellent. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for listening. And thank you for that great introduction. So, yes, this is the presentation that I gave at Connect this year, back in January. And one of the things that I want you to get out of the presentation today is not necessarily to come away with being a great JavaScript developer or a great jQuery developer or anything like that, but it's really to understand what is possible. Once you understand what is possible, then you can always go and find out more information. You can ask the right people, but this is really just to broaden the possibilities. So, yes, I have been doing IBM Notes Domino for 15 years, almost exclusively as a web developer. Haven't done client development in a very long time. And I work at PSC, based out of Chicago. You can find more information on my blog, or you can always contact me on email or Twitter on Skype. Please feel free to get in touch, ask any questions after the presentation or anything like that. I'll be more than happy to help wherever I possibly can. So what are we going to talk about today? I'm going to talk about jQuery. I'm going to talk about why you should use jQuery and sometimes why you shouldn't. There is certainly overlap in some of the functionality of jQuery and Dojo, and there are conscious decisions that has to be made as to whether or not you use one or the other. I'm going to give you a little insight into how jQuery works, some of the syntax, and just some insight into why it is so popular. I'm then going to give you a demonstration of how to add it to your XPage, why you should do it one way or another, talk about the plugins, and then we're going to do some demonstrations of some of the plugins that I have put on the blog, and talk about why jQuery plugins can really help you as a developer solve most of the problems that you get at 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, and saves you a lot of sleep. So what is jQuery? As I'm sure many of you know, jQuery is a JavaScript library, and this is the description that they provide on their website. It was created in 2006, so it's really quite mature right now. In fact, they released version 2 just last week. The original concept that was created by John Resick was that back in 2006, the differences between all the different browsers were even worse than they are nowadays. And he was finding that he was writing the same things 3 or 4 times to 3 or 4 different browsers. So growing off some of the libraries that were already out there, he started to build jQuery for his own benefit, so that he would only have to program things once, and then they would work on multiple browsers without him having to think about it. And if you're getting into web development, it's a big deal. And believe me, 7 years ago, it was an even bigger deal than it is now. And it is open source, licensed under the MIT license. So as long as you provide due praise and all that kind of stuff, and it's in the code anyway, it's free to use for anybody. jQuery is used on 2/3 of the world's top 10,000 websites. If you just think about that for a minute. That is how popular jQuery is. It's on almost everything. Almost all the websites that you come across, one way or another, are probably using jQuery in one form or another, and probably as a plugin. All the sites listed here use it, and jQuery has contributed, first and foremost, to the expectations of your customers when it comes to websites. When you go to a website and you see some nice interaction, you see a nice little slideshow or some fancy pop-ups, fade in, fades out, chances are jQuery is behind that. So the expectations of your customers when they want an awesome-looking website are based on what other people have already done with jQuery. And it's kind of important to understand where they're coming from, how it's possible, and how you can get it into your XPages. jQuery comes in 3 out-of-the-box packages. We are going to look at the core package today, and it also comes as a UI. There's a jQueryUI.com, and what you get out of that website is more analogous to Dojo widgets. So you get some fancy animations, you get some calendar pickers, drag and drop, things like that. And they come in a separate package if you want to use them. And jQuery Mobile is available, and they just released 1.3 in the last couple of months, and you will see a lot of mobile websites are starting to use that as well as an HTML-based user interface. I could talk about jQuery Mobile and UI for another couple of hours, but unfortunately we're not going to have time to today. But both the UI and mobile interfaces are built on top of the core model. So what about Dojo? Dojo comes out of the box with XPages. It's loaded on all of your XPages. And because of that, there's already an overhead on every page of having a Dojo library loaded. So, as I mentioned before, Dojo and jQuery have some of the same basic premises and principles. They will help you with browser compatibility. So instead of having to determine the screen size or the height and width and style sheet attributes of many elements, both libraries do a very similar job of allowing you to get hold of something on the web page and do something to it in a generic way that will allow you to not have to program it for multiple browsers. And Dojo comes with widgets. They're on the server, they're there for you to call, and if you use some of the extension library form controls and other parts in the extension library, you're already using Dojo widgets, whether you realize it or not. There are many differences in where the developers want to go with the different libraries and how you use it. Dojo, in some senses, is intended to allow you to create a fully functioning JavaScript framework. So you could build an entire site on JavaScript. And if you ever are curious, you can go in and take a look at what IBM have done in the client Dojo libraries and the XSP libraries that make XPages work, and it really is a fantastic piece of code. And you can see, if you read through it, some of the complexities and some of the things they've done in there are very impressive, and Dojo lends itself to that very well. But you and I are not building XPages as an application coming from the server. You and I are building individual applications that meet specific customer needs. And jQuery was intended to make coding as easy as possible. And as we go through, you will see how this has evolved and how it has become popular. So where's the balance? As I mentioned, it's another library to load. It's about 90 kilobytes. Now, if you're on a fast network, you don't have remote users, nobody notices whether your web page is 10, 50, 100, or 500 kilobytes. In fact, if you go to CNN.com, you will, and actually piece through everything, you will see that it's hundreds of kilobytes of code that go into loading that page. So gone are the days where connectivity is oftentimes the rate determining step on whether or not a website works. Networks are a lot faster than they used to be, but not always. Not always. There are functional requirements. Do you need jQuery? If Dojo does what you need it to do, why have the extra overhead? Obviously, it's important within the team as to whether or not, first of all, people know Dojo or jQuery, whether or not it fits into the project timeline as to whether or not you want to start to use jQuery, and in the long run, the maintainability of the application. If you've got a crack team of Dojo developers and only one jQuery developer, if you write your application using jQuery, it makes it harder to manage. So all of these things come into consideration up front, and it should be a conscious decision as to whether or not jQuery is used within your application. jQuery 2, which was, I said, released last week, does not support less than IE9. And they're very happy about that. But that does not mean that jQuery will stop to support browsers less than IE9. In fact, jQuery 1.9 will continue to be evolved for at least the next 2 years and supported, and that supports everything back to IE 6, 7, and 8, which I know a lot of people still are using internally within their corporations because they just don't have control over the end state of their users' browsers. So again, it's another consideration. What is your target audience going to look like? So don't use jQuery when you don't need to. And also only use what you need to. jQuery is not modularized in the same way that Dojo is. Dojo uses AMD loaders and only loads the bits of Dojo that it needs. The thought process behind jQuery is to load it all in one go to make it easier for the developers so they don't have to do that. But it is a consideration. If you're only doing simple manipulation, making a field red or highlighting something on the page, you can do those in Dojo very easily. And there's no reason to use jQuery. If that's the only thing you want to do, don't. You know, I mean, I'm going to tell you why you should use it today, but, you know, the thought process still has to go into it. I will caution that if you're using the application layout from the extension library and you're using one UI, just be aware that to get it to look as good as it does, it is extremely insistent on the style sheets that it uses. And it's not that jQuery plugins don't work with one UI, but one UI may be too insistent at times, and your plugins might not look as they did as well on the example site. And that's not to say that it can't be fixed, but just be aware that the style sheet in one UI can be a little oppressive, and you know, you can work through it, and you just have to work at controlling the style sheet for yourself. And certainly don't use jQuery just because you don't want to learn Dojo. You know, we're all big boys and girls, and if we need to be able to do something and it made sense to do it in Dojo, then learn Dojo. On the flip side, you should use jQuery when all of the other isn't true. So when you need to do something on the web page and it's not available in Dojo, or if it's available much easier in jQuery and it would take a considerable amount of effort and time in Dojo, then do it in jQuery. You may have specific animation. There may be something that somebody has written out the box that makes the page turn and flip and go around the corner or do whatever you want it to do that makes it much easier than Dojo. jQuery actually has a broader browser compatibility model than Dojo does, although I will say that the browsers out on the fringes, probably like Symbian and Palm, probably not going to cross your desk anytime soon, but it is there, and it's another consideration. And obviously, if the requirements and the business plan and all of the planning supports the use of jQuery. But the most important reason why we use jQuery is because of the plugin community. And we will come to see how broad and extensive that is as we go through the conversation. So how does jQuery work? Well, it basically allows you to select something on the page and then do something with it. And there are many, many, many different out-of-the-box methods, properties, getters, setters, and all that kind of stuff, which are extremely well documented on the api.jquery.com website. And what I've done here is I've put up these examples just so that you can see that it's also very easy to read. So if I want to select an element could be image, it could be div, it could be a class name or an ID tag, and then I want to get the height or the position. But the important thing to notice is that they're all in the same format. Everything looks the same, whether you're getting or setting a property, whether you're looking to do something to it, whether you're even Ajax, you're trying to bind events, the format and the syntax is the same, and that's really important because that makes it very simple to understand. And mentally, I want to do this, then this, then this. So in this particular example, so the way that we call jQuery, in a sense, is we use this $sign. So instead of using document.getElementById, we would just use $, and then we use a £sign for an ID. Or in this case, it allows us to get everything with a specific class, in this case, my class. And then once you've got that, what do you do with it? Well, in this case, I want to set a CSS value of display none. So if you imagine your style sheets, and your style sheet would look like .class and then curly brackets, display none, this is doing the same thing programmatically, and you can do it if and when you want it to. And that's what you would do. So, for example, if you wanted to hide and show something based on a selection from a drop-down, this would give you a very easy way to do it programmatically. Chaining. Now, I believe, arguably, chaining is the reason why jQuery is as popular as it is. You can do chaining in Dojo, but it's harder, and it's not as intuitive, and it's not possible in all cases. Chaining was in jQuery from the beginning. And if you remember all of those things that I showed you in the table earlier, the .css, .position, .height, and all that, whether they're properties, methods, getters, or setters, you can chain them all together. So you can do this, then that, then this, then that, all together as one line of code. So in this particular example, I'm using jQuery to get everything with the paragraph tag. And then within that, I'm going to find everything that contains the letter T, and I am going to color it red. So this is directly analogous to being able to do a search in Lotus Notes. So if you're in the Notes client and you do a search for a text value and you hit and you open your document, it's highlighted in the document. This would allow you to do something like that on a web page. And I, for one, wouldn't know where to begin to program how to do that. So if I had that requirement of doing that on the web page, I would have to think, okay, so I'm going to have to get at every piece of text on the page. I'm not sure how I would do that. Then I have to parse every one of them. Then I have to figure out which contains, and when you just start to think about this for a minute, you know you're looking at a world of hurt and hours of work. This took me 5 minutes to figure out because Google is my friend, and I will come to discuss that later. But part of the goodness and joy of using jQuery is that because so many other people are using it, I almost guarantee that anything you possibly want to do in jQuery has already been tried by somebody else. Somebody else has failed. They've asked a question about it on Stack Overflow, and somebody else has told them how to do it. It's truly enlightening when you realize that everybody else has already done all the work you need to do for you. It's wonderful. Chaining has multiple advantages as well as making it extremely easy to use conceptually. It uses the same object every time. So it doesn't get all of these, then do something to it, then get all of those again, and then do something. So there's lower memory consumption. This is one line of code. The syntax is very simple. And what it does is it allows to create plugins. Because when people build the plugins properly, this could be select all paragraphs and then do Marky's plugin to it. And it doesn't really matter for the sake of this what do Marky's plugin does, but by putting it on here, the syntax is exactly the same, and you could insert it into here. You could do p.find.doMarkyStuff.css, and it just allows everything to chain together, for want of a better word, very easily. So how do I add jQuery to my application? Well, as I mentioned before, it's a client-side JavaScript library. And there are many ways that it could be actually added to your application. You could add it to the application. You could then add it to an individual X page. You could add it to all your X pages. You could put it on the server, either through an OSGI plugin or just put the files on the server so they could be referenced from the application. But we're going to look at how you add it to the application today. When we come to them, I'll show you that the plugins contain many images and style sheets. It's almost like a miniature application. It's not just the library, it's everything else that goes around making it pretty. And these all come together as a package. and you can make your life very difficult or very simple and when you add this to the application. So I've got some pictures in the slides here, but what I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you on my virtual machine over here. You go to jQuery.com and we download it. And we download it by right-clicking on the link, save link as, and I'm going to put it on my desktop in this JavaScript folder, or JS folder. And that's done. So if we go look at that, it's now in there. And then within Domino Designer, what I've got open right now, what I meant to put back, was this is the Domino Designer perspective. So this is a familiar interface that we would have from pre-XPages Domino. And what we're going to do is we're going to open the Package Explorer. But the way we're going to do that, this is R9, you can do this in 8.5.3 as well, is you open the XPages perspective and you get the Package Explorer. And the Package Explorer gives you the Java overview of the way that your XPage application is put together. And within the Package Explorer, within your database, we have this web content folder. And this web content folder functions as if everything in it was on the end of your URL after the NSF. So in old notes, when we would add an image resource, we would reference the image resource by saying marky.nsf/imagename.gif. This is the same thing in here. So if we take this Notes in 9 logo, and I just take a look at my database, and I stick it on the end of there, you can see the Notes in 9 logo. So everything in here is referenced after the NSF file. And what's important about that is it gives you the ability to drag and drop an entire plugin library in here. So I mentioned earlier, for example, that some of the plugins have CSS and images. And we'll look at this plugin later, but this Galleria plugin has images, it has got CSS, it's got JavaScript libraries. Now, if you imagine for a minute that you were going to add all of these as an image resource or a JavaScript library or a CSS style sheet, you can very quickly begin to realize that this becomes extremely difficult to maintain because you don't know where everything is. And I think that's fairly self-explanatory by just looking at it. You wouldn't want to manage all of those individually within your application, especially because when you call this particular library, it thinks that everything else is in this structure. And the examples that you download from the plugin website already has it in the structure. So once you've downloaded the plugin, you literally drag and drop and release. And you can now see that I put this JavaScript folder in here just for the example. Let me do that again and you'll see it. I'll just drag it and drop it in there. So you're going to go to your plugin website, you're going to download your plugin, and you're going to drag and drop it into your application, and it's going to be there. It's as simple as that. So just moving that back out of the way. I'm just going through that again. Don't add it as a file resource. You can add jQuery as a JavaScript resource, and you can add it to your XPage as a resource by going into the XPage and adding a resource. What that does is, when you're in the designer looking at it rather than the source panel, unfortunately, XPages tries to render that every single time you do something. So in the design panel, when you're looking at it, it's loading all of your code and CSS and everything else. It's trying to display it in real time. You don't need to see it. Don't put it there. You're making your life much harder. Put it in the web content like I showed. There's the web content. And part of the reason for putting this in the slide deck is so that people can have this afterwards, rather than just seeing it on the demonstration. And then we drag and drop it into the folder. Okay, so when we actually want to add it to our XPage, we add it just like you would on a web page. In fact, You can copy and paste this from the presentation, or if you look in any of in my sample databases that you can download from the website, you will see that this is how I use it for individual XPages. Or if you know it's going to be on multiple XPages on your whole application, then add it through a theme. And this is how you would do it. So rather than having it on every page individually, add it through a theme. It just makes more sense and it's more efficient. So I want to give you an example of one of the things that jQuery helped me do and can help you do in the future. So here we have a notes view, and I'm going to jump over to my notes client. And so here we have a notes view, typical notes view. These fields could be as long or as short as we don't know. But the way people would use this view is they would scan down here looking for what they wanted, and then they would open the document. Well, if we put that on a view panel on a web page, you get this. The web page displays the whole field, which makes it much harder for the user to find what they're looking for, and then they would click on the link and go into the document. It's not the best user experience. There's no wow there. It just is. It's functional, but yeah. So using jQuery, I basically I did this to it. So first of all, I've made the maximum height of every row only to be 100 pixels. So immediately it becomes much easier to read. When I move over one of these items, it scrolls everything else out of the way and it dims it. And it doesn't matter how big or small it is, it does all of that on all of these different rows. So if I find a big one, you can see down here, it does the same thing. So your user is going to scan down the page, makes it much easier for them to scan, and they go, that's what I want to read. And in this case, this one is small enough that it doesn't need to because it's small. So if we look at the source of this page very quickly, that is all the jQuery necessary to do all of that. And you can take a look at this on my demo website. And really, all it is a little bit of imagination as to what do you want to do. So to make this work, I'm not going to go through the code, but that's all it is. Basically, what I want is I want a fixed height. And when I mouse over this, I want every other row except for this one to dim out, and I want this row to be as big as it needs to be. And when I mouse out of it, I want the opposite. I want every other row to fade in, and for this one to scroll back up. That has wow factor. The difference between showing that to your customer or showing that to your customer is huge. And, in some senses, that might not be necessarily what they want, but it will get them excited about the possibilities and, what you could do. How did I figure out how to do this? I went to Google, and I Googled for jQuery expanding and collapsing table rows. And I found an example, and within 2 hours, I'd done this. So, going back to the presentation, and there's a link to the example on the website. So what are jQuery plugins? Well, they are jQuery code that has been written in a specific way to make the plugin chainable. As I mentioned before, it allows you to do any kind of selector and then do something to it. And as you've seen from the Galleria example, that happens to be a slideshow lightbox, and it's pretty. And I'll show you an example of it in a few minutes. But it comes with multiple other things other than just a JavaScript library. And all I need to do is do something, and it all magically works. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. So, yeah, I think I've already talked about that. So the plugins come with many other items, as you can see here. So let's take a look at an example. So in this particular case, we're going to look at Joyride. So I've had this requirement before in the past when we've upgraded our intranet, and the boss comes and says, you know what will be really cool is when the user comes to the site for the first time, I'd really like you to be able to highlight and show them some of the cool features on the pages so that they know what's there for the first time. You know, it's the entrance into the new help documentation that we know nobody's going to read, but at least they get an overview and an oversight of what's there. So this plugin, what it does is it guides you around the page and says, oh, look at this. Look at that. Isn't this cool? Isn't this awesome? And what you have to do as a developer is you have to determine what the text is, and it pretty much, and obviously where the text is applicable, but it pretty much takes care of the rest of it for you. And what the developer has done, and you'll see this in a lot of plugins, is he's given you options. So in this particular case, the options, and you don't have to use any of these. All of these are entirely optional. You could just do this.joyride and none of these. But he says, where do you want it? How quickly do you want it to come in and out? Do you want a next button? Animations? This is a very sweet little thing. If you want the pop-up to only appear the first time, you can set a cookie value when it does. And what you can do is then read the cookie the next time, say the user's already seen this, and not bring it back again. And it does that out of the box for you. There's also callbacks for before you start and when you end for if you want to do anything else to it. It's really kind of cool. So let's take a look at that. So this is Joyride, and I'm just going to click on Next, and it's going to take me around the web page, and you'll see that you can put anything that you want into any one of these boxes, and it scrolls the page appropriately to move around it. So you don't have to programmatically scroll the user down the page. And I assure you that's not as simple as it seems. And you know, again, with this plugin, here's my requirement. You download it. The instructions are very simple. The examples are fantastic. And in a very short period of time, you can meet your requirement to get this plugin on your web page. Notes in 9. I may have mentioned it a couple of times today. It is a fantastic website. Dave Leedy is huge contributor to the community, and one of the screencast episodes I did for him introducing one of the plugins was basically I redid the presentation as to how you add a jQuery plugin to your XPage. Episode 74, go take a look at it from his website, notesin9.com. And there's a step-by-step process of this is how you find the plugin, this is how you download it, how you put it into your XPage, and how you get it to run within your XPage, end-to-end demonstration, and the whole thing takes 20 minutes to get it up and running. It's that quick. Oop. So, how can jQuery solve my requirements? And this is what differentiates jQuery from Dojo. When it comes to deciding whether or not you want it. It's all of the libraries and the plugins that other people have made. When your boss comes into the office on a Friday afternoon and he says, so the boss wants a whole new feature on the website. We've got loads of pictures that we're really not using. We'd like a picture show on the front page. You know, you've seen them, they're online. And it needs to work on his iPad as well, just to keep him happy. If you didn't know about jQuery and they asked you how to do that, panic would set in immediately. Fortunately, you now know about jQuery, and you would go to Google and you would search for jQuery plugins, and you would come up with this website, which is going to open up in the wrong browser, I believe. Hang on. Oh, go the right way. That's not coming up at all. Excuse me, I should have been better prepared. Technicalities. So here's the page that you find, and you go, oh, other people have done some of these, and you can start to scroll down through here, and each one of these pages links to an example of that particular lightbox or slideshow or whatever it is, and you find this one, and you click on it. It takes you to the website, and here's the demonstration. So there's all, here's your slideshow. There's a play option. You got some fancy text under here. You can pick thumbnails. You can even make it go full screen if you have a nice browser. That's very cool. Oh, and died. Awesome. Gotta love that. But that's what you can do, and you download this, and all you need to do with this plugin is point it at a div that contains images. And how you get those images into that div as an XPages developer is entirely up to you, whether you use a repeat control or however you want to do it. And then you select the div containing the images and run Galleria on it. And that's it. So you actually only have to write one line of code to make this plugin work. Back on this Joyride page, you'll see this is a similar one. This one's called Pretty Photo. But when I click on that one, I can then run through the pictures. This one is a little different. There are lots of different choices. You can pick on this one. This one actually resizes the image. You know you want to buy this man over here. And there you go. There's your light show. In little to no time, you can get one of these on your website. There are over 3,000 plugins. Over 3,000 plugins in everything that you possibly need to do on a web page. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at some of these in a minute. And again, the possibilities are endless. And best of all, most of them are free. Free is good. Most of them are licensed under MIT or GLP3 or whatever it is. You just have to make sure that on your site, and it's usually in the JavaScript library itself anyway, is the correct attribution to the author. All the demonstrations I'm going to go through today can be found at demo.com. And if you want more information about this particular presentation, you can go to the link, or you can even look at my slideshare.net site for Marky Roden. I'm sure we'll make sure that the presentation, what have you, is published when we're done. So before I jump into questions, let's go take a look at some demonstrations. So we looked at Joyride. So a color picker. I'm not quite sure why I would need a color picker, but I think it's really kind of cool that on your web page you can do something like this. I mean, this I would expect out of Photoshop. This you can do in your browser, and I can move that up and down here, and you can see up here that I'm recording that color. So if you want to personalize a page for somebody or have some custom colors on somebody, or you even just want a color picker that you can pull up on your web page, there is one. And this is the code to put it into your page. Honestly, for the most part, it's copy and paste, except for that says I need a div that's called color selector on your X page, and you put the code on it, and it just works. This is a nice one. So this is long press. I have a friend called Serdar Bashames, and I know I've got that wrong. And I don't even know if he's listening, and I apologize if he is. And I do have his permission to do this. Serdar is extremely selfish, and in his name he has some non-Cyrillic characters. He gets very upset when people don't use the right characters for his name. So normally, if you wanted to create non-standard characters that don't come up on your keyboard, you would have to go to Word. You'd open Word, you'd find a symbol list, you'd pick the symbol you wanted to, you'd put it on Word, you'd copy and you paste it into your web page. Kind of tedious. In this case, if I hold down the S key, I get a list of all of the different non-standard characters that are listed in the character set of this particular web page, and I can pick the one I want. And in this case, I can pick the G, and I can get his name correct. For those of you who have international offices and what have you, that's really kind of cool. Here's another one. So we have a dollar symbol. Well, what if we're not just in dollar land? Well, guess what? If I hold it down, I can pick different characters. Euro. There are some Greek characters tucked away in here. We can get a lambda, or we can get a capital L, and a whole world of different E's or I's or U's or something like that. But the ability to put that into your web page is very cool. Very cool. And there's the code. So this field is has a class of long press, and that's what you do. It's one line of code to make all of that happen. Mask money. I know we've all had this. So I need a field, and you can't type in text, and I need it to be formatted correctly. Well, just trust me when I say I'm pushing text. Now I'm pushing numbers, and it automatically maintains where the dot is. In this particular, and there you go. So you can control the decimal, and there are no thousands. In this case, you can see this keeps going up. There's no thousands. Well, in this one, first of all, we have a yen symbol, always good. The thousands is a dot and the decimals is a comma. I know that's backwards. It doesn't matter. The point is you have control over that. So I start hitting text, nothing happens. I start hitting numbers. Yes, the points and the comma is backwards. I told it to do that. But you now have control over a much nicer looking money field than you otherwise would have out of the box. You know this exists. It will take you 5 minutes to Google mask money, get it in your database, get it in your fields, rather than writing that yourself. This one I really like, really like. So there is a type ahead out of the box in Lotus Notes, in XPages. And, well, it's kind of cool compared to what we used to have in old Notes. But it's kind of limited, because if I want another value in here, it concatenates them together with a comma. And suddenly, that's kind of not good. So, token input autocomplete, which quite frankly is a crap name, but what can you do about it? Gives you the ability to do it like this. It's the same feed, but this happens. Oops. And you can pick these, you can delete them, and this is all out-of-the-box functionality. I happen to have tweaked the color scheme. If you want it to look like Facebook, and you do it like this. And this is out of the box. I just told it to use the Facebook theme. Or in this case, I actually, and you can see the code down here, it's a little more complicated, but it really isn't. Again, it goes back to your imagination of how you want to do this. If I do this, I'm actually going out in real time and looking at the Twitter feed and displaying that to a user. I can't spell that. Let's go for something simple then. XPages. Headbrill. That, although the colors are a bit that has wow factor compared to that. It's night and day different user experience. And this is what gets you noticed for your users. And by the way, when this is submitted and you don't have to touch this, this is tagged back to the Twitter ID of that particular tweet. So you can display what you want to the user, but when you hit submit, what's actually given to you and sent back to your X page is, in this case, it's the underlying user ID. So you show the users one thing, you get what you want on the back end. That is cool. Just to show you a couple of other ones, charting. There are multiple different charting plugins. In this case, Adam 8.3 and Jane 8.7, whatever. And then I do this, and it now draws the new chart. And I'm actually taking this chart from this data in the view panel on the page. And this particular chart, you can do lots of different themes and colors and all sorts of pretty things. This one doesn't happen to be free, but there are many that are. I like this one a lot, though, and I think it's worth it. If you want some little charts, just itty-bitty little charts, what this demonstration does is it shows you, I'm totaling this column, which is 42. I'm then going through the next step by dividing this value by 42 to get a percentage, and then from that percentage, I then draw a little pie chart in the table. You can do it as the page loads if you wanted it to, but very easily you can start to draw these cool little charts all over your page. And this is the last one I'll do for right now, although we can come back and do others later. This is a jQuery plugin, map of the world, and you can zoom in, you can mouse over the country, and you can get stats about the country. In this case, I took the data from Wikipedia, but it doesn't matter. This is your map. You could use this for free and show your data to your users. Out of the box, you've got World, Germany, Europe, and USA. And it allows you to click on these areas. I don't have the pop-up for this particular map, but only because it's not part of this example. That's out of the box. You can't draw that yourself. You just can't, and you shouldn't try. And there are many other demos. If you go to demo.zomino.com, you'll basically get the same thing that we've shown today. Yeah, so that's pretty much it as for the different demonstrations. So what I will do now is I will hand back to the guys, if I can figure out how to do it, and if we run out of questions and people want to see some more demos, we can go through them when we're finished. Okay? So I will send Howard presenter.
That'll be fine, Mark.
Yeah.
And Mark, actually, before you do that, let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
Show us how, like where would this code go? If you have an X page and you had, let's say, the type ahead example, would you put that in the on-page load, or maybe
there you go.
Break that down?
Let's do that. And so this is my sample database, which is downloadable from the demo website. And the way I've got it set up is each individual X page has a basic container, and then within the container I have each individual custom control. So I'm going to look at the custom control for the token input. So as you can see, there's my X page. And in this particular example, I have the REST service that I use for one of the feeds. There's my out-of-the-box type ahead. So let's look at this one, and let's go to the source panel and look at that. So that is just a field. It's just a field on the form, and what I've done is, after the field, I've added a script block. And all that does is it selects that custom field, custom 1, and then it does a token input on it, and I point it at this LotusScript agent. and that's it. That's all it does. And the LotusScript agent pumps out JSON in a format that token input uses. So that's how it works. How I added it to the web page is up here. I actually use a theme for my website, so you don't see jQuery on here because it's added through a theme. But this is how I added token input to the web page. So I have the JavaScript file, I have the basic look and feel, I have the Facebook look and feel, and there's one for Mac, but I don't think I actually use it in this particular example. So I basically copied and pasted that from the example I downloaded from the web page and XPageified it and put it in here. You don't even have to use XPscript. This is kind of an old one. I've basically come to the conclusion that I don't need to use this resource anymore. I just literally add the script. But you evolve as a developer. If you don't look back on what you were doing 6 months ago and go, why did I do that? Then you haven't learned anything. If I go down here and I look at the Facebook themed item, so I'm getting this text input field 2. I'm selecting that, and I'm using the token input plugin on it, and that's the feed. And then this is an option, which I didn't use before, but this is an option that I can say, theme it as Facebook. The hint text is, where's that fishy gone? You may not have noticed that earlier, but if I actually click on here, you can see this text, where's that fishy gone? Yeah, I'm weird. If you get nothing, it returns nobody's there. Or it does if you've done it properly. But the searching text is searching, searching, searching. Eventually it'll fail and it'll tell you that nobody's here. So if you write your code properly, I suppose, you have control over that. That's really cool. So you can give the user a hint, which you just can't out of this box. That's another really cool feature of this. That's basically it. That's how this one works. Looking at the long press one, there's the style sheet that I happen to have put on the page, and there it is. That's the function that uses long press. It gets it by style. So we have a text area with a class of long press, and that's how we add it to the page. So it's really very little effort, and you're mostly copying and pasting from the examples. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks. As programmers, we always like to see the code and how it would be actually implemented.
Like I mentioned earlier, if you go to the Notes in 9 video, there's a whole 25 minutes of downloading the Trunk 8 plugin and actually applying it to a view panel and showing the results from end to end. And I think that is the best example I can give of how to add one to a website is to go watch the screencast.
Okay, thanks. All right, well, I think we're going to go to Q&A. Mark, if you can pass control over to me.
Yep, and that has gone. There you go.
Okay, so just a reminder, you can ask a question. We have a number of questions already, but you can ask questions by the ribbon in the WebEx software at the top of your screen. There should be a Q&A button. If you don't see that Q&A button, then there is a drop-down arrow. It could be that the Q&A option is in the drop-down. Once you open that panel up, you'll have the ability to ask a question. You should ask of all panelists, not just Mark. So we could all see that, and Mark will answer your questions verbally. Just as we're getting a couple more questions, just a reminder, Mark, I don't think you're speaking, but I think you're involved in the DC Lug on April 24th?
Yes, tomorrow, in fact. Yes, I'm one of the organizers of the DC Lug.
Okay, and then you have someone speaking. This is great for anyone who is just getting started with XPages. I think they're talking about basically it's introduction to XPages.
Yes, tomorrow. Yes, it is.
Okay, so if you're in the DC area, you're looking to get started with XPages, you go to that website. It's meetup.com/DC-Lotus-professionals. And another reminder about Unplugged, on the 6th to the 7th is the 2-day event, and then immediately after that is a Hackathon with both Teamstudio doing a mobile XPages and TLCC doing the XPages application layout and Dojo UI controls. And the week before that, at Developer 2013, Talene and Paul will be there. You can visit Talene and say hello at the Teamstudio booth. And Paul will be doing a number of sessions during Developer 2013.
Just
so
seven.
What's that?
Just 7 sessions.
Just 7, just a few sessions. And if you need to contact TLCC or Teamstudio, our information is there at the bottom. So Paul, do we have some questions lined up?
Yes, we've got a few lined up, and certainly continue to post them. Question from Doug: what's the best way to include the JavaScript libraries in a Domino application that you want available for offline use, i.e. local notes application?
Well, that's a very good question. In old notes, you really can't. In XPages, there is the Xpink, the XPages in the Notes client, and I guess we could take a look at that if we want. But it works very well in Xpink. So Xpink is actually Firefox 3.6, I think, or equivalent. But that is actually one of the supported browsers in the pre-jQuery 2.0. And I've only had one plugin cause me problems in Xpink. In fact, we used them for one of our latest projects, really without any trouble at all. So because it's in Xpink, it can go offline, and because Xpink is basically a web browser within your Notes application anyway, that's how you're able to do it. In a Notes client application, it's not really possible.
All right, thanks, Mark. Got another question from Rohit. What are the security aspects to take under consideration when using jQuery? What are the best practices that you would need to make the page hack-proof?
What I would say is that jQuery itself doesn't make your web page any more or less secure than it would otherwise be. All of the potential security issues that could be raised within your web page and within your website are more really down to the administrative settings on your web server. I will say that jQuery, you are downloading it from an external source, and in certain environments, the security team may want to give it the once-over to make sure that jQuery itself is not going to any foreign websites or whatever they want to check it for. But jQuery itself will not make your page any more or less hack-proof, and it won't help you make it hack-proof, if that makes any sense. That's really down to programming and, more importantly, administrative settings on the web server that won't allow people to insert their code into your site.
Okay, Paul, did you have?
I've got a question that's probably not fair for Marky, but is the Domino platform moving away from Dojo in favor of jQuery? Maybe I'll take that one on.
So you want to ask yourself a question? Nice.
I don't think so.
I have heard.
Of course, we don't know that.
No.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, it may or may not. Honestly, I don't know. I'm not privy to that particular information. I very much doubt it in the near term, that's for sure.
Kind of a sort of related question from, I'm going to mispronounce this, from Smitri. Is it okay to use Dojo and jQuery on one page?
Yes, it is. For the most part, and I will say for the most part, Dojo and jQuery as libraries function independently from each other, and in of themselves will not clash. You can have Dojo and jQuery on the page at the same time. They will not clash with each other. However, what might happen, and I think it was brought up in the community this week, about jQuery Mobile 1.3, what may happen is you may have something on the page which tells Dojo to do something, but you also have that thing on the page that jQuery Mobile or jQuery needs to do because there's an attribute on a field or something like that. And you may end up with a clash when both libraries want to do something to the same DOM element. That would cause a potential clash. But for the most part, outside of that, I've had no problems at all. They are self-contained, so when you reference the $selector and then your jQuery code, that doesn't do anything to Dojo. And when you do your Dojo.selectors and what have you, that doesn't do anything to jQuery. Only if they both try and act on the same element at the same time will you have problems. And you, for the most part, have control over that and can avoid that as well.
Okay, thanks, Marky. And actually, I think to disable Dojo is rather difficult on XPages too, right? I mean, I think the only way to do it is to do the XAgent type technology where you control all the HTML that's sent down to the browser.
No, there's an XSP property that will turn Dojo off.
There is. Okay. Oh, okay. That makes it possible.
But I will say, for the most part, if you're actually going to turn Dojo off on your X page, you're basically losing all of your X page functionality. So why are you using XPages? It's a thought and a consideration, but if you're going to turn it off for the whole application, you're basically then left with XPages being able to provide you data and a security model. I get that, but it's definitely a consideration as to why would you want to turn Dojo off completely.
Okay. You got it, Paul?
Yeah, a question from Don. Any tips on using jQuery Mobile with XPages?
Up until yesterday, I was said, sure, no problems at all. So the extension library.
You definitely have a tip, Mark.
Well, the tip is, because I don't know another workaround, is, well, the problem was in R9, they've upgraded to Dojo 1.8. And it appears that Dojo 1.8 acts on some of the data attributes that are necessary for jQuery Mobile. And I kind of need to get on that and figure out how to get around that and how to stop it doing it. But that only came up yesterday. What I would say is, and this is really personal preference, with the extension library you get the Dojo Mobile controls, and they will provide you a relatively easy way to create a web page on the individual device that looks like that device. So Android will be themed to look like Android, iPad will be themed to look like iPad. jQuery Mobile has one theme, regardless of which device you're on. So that may be important, but personally, I prefer the flexibility of jQuery Mobile. jQuery Mobile allows me to style my X page to work on a mobile device. Whereas if I use the Dojo Mobile controls from the extension library, on the one hand, it does make your life easier as a developer, but you're absolutely tied to the way that it works. So you have to take what it gives you, and for the most part, in my opinion, have less control. So there's a balance depending on how much control you want or how quickly you want to create your site. Either way, you're going to end up with a mobile website one way or the other. But I tend to always go towards the more control for Marky, less control for the server. But that's just a personal preference, really.
Okay, we have a question from Brian. Would you also suggest putting the ext.js library to the web content folder as opposed to, he said, life resources? I'm not quite sure what he meant by that. I use Dreamweaver to reference the CSS and then WebDAV for the updated library to the file resources.
I use the ext.js library by putting it in the database. There's no reason why you couldn't put it on the server and reference it directly on your server. But I add it to the database in the web content folder and then reference it from there.
Okay, so you're saying you do suggest putting it into the web content folder as opposed to the resources.
Oh no, yeah, don't put it as resources. But I'm also not quite sure if the question is clear, because the ext.js grid literally comes with thousands of resources, and I can't believe they're all added manually, because that would take you most of the rest of the year to do that. But you can add it into the web content, just drag and drop the folder that comes from the download. One thing I would say is the download for the ext.js grid is 40 meg. You don't need all of that. Don't put all of it in your database. But that's not really jQuery, so let's get back to jQuery.
Okay.
But I appreciate the question. Thank you.
I've got a question from Vinay. Please share best practices to version control jQuery.
That's a very good question.
Yeah, we saw you download 1.9, I think it was, of jQuery.
Yes.
But, you had an application at 1.8, so
yes.
How do you manage that?
Well, that's a very good question. For the most part, like all libraries, I guess, before version 2, I would say, backwards compatibility is very important to them. And as they're going through the release candidate process and the beta testing for each individual release, they basically open it out to the public so that they can test it with their existing websites to make sure that there is backwards compatibility. But that's not to say that it's perfect. And ultimately, you're using somebody else's code anyway. So you do have a choice. You have a choice. And certain plugins require certain versions of jQuery, the core, because new features are added to the core all the time. So some of the examples I've got are 2 or 3 years old, and they work with jQuery 1.4, and LongPress requires 1.7, for example. So there really isn't a good answer, because it really depends on how you as an organization want to be able to manage it. In some senses, some people would say just put the latest version out on the server, call it jQuery.js, and then everything references jQuery.js, and you never have to upgrade your application. But if you do that, you've got to go and retest all of your applications every time you want a new plugin. So the other side of the coin is, if you are using this version of jQuery in this particular application, put the jQuery library that you need in this application, and you'll never have to upgrade it, because unless you upgrade the plugin, in which case you may need to upgrade the jQuery library. But like I say, there really isn't a good answer. It's kind of down to an organizational plan as to how are we going to do this over time. And if you want the next plugin in 6 months and it needs the next version of jQuery, what are you going to do about it when it happens? So you've either got to plan to test or keep the database, keep the version independent in each different database. Size is an issue, but I don't think it's a huge issue. I don't know what else to tell you, really. It's really down to the organization and how you want to plan. But I will tell you that it's the same for different versions of Java, jQuery, Dojo, or anything else that you have that gets versioned. Is how do you deal with that internally as an organization?
Okay, Mark, we had a couple questions about using jQuery in a non-XPages environment, like a native notes legacy form, you know, that was done on the web, and people don't have the ability to go to XPages yet. Poor souls.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've been using jQuery since I was using it in an R65 database. Ultimately, jQuery hasn't got anything to do with XPages or Domino. It is JavaScript, and it is web-based functionality. And your XPages or your non-XPages web server is just a web server that serves information up onto the page. Certainly, the XPages, the web content folder, has made my life unimaginably easier, because you can drag and drop the whole example folder in and it just works. Back in the old days, I used to end up getting the files put on the server and referencing them there, because it became a nightmare to manage them individually as images or CSS or resources. But it absolutely will work in old Domino. No doubt about it.
Okay, thank you. Paul, do you have a question queued up?
I've got one from Mohammed. Is there a multi-file uploader? Is there a plugin for that?
Yes, there is. And in fact, well, two things. Yes, there is. And Julian Buss has actually published a project in OpenNTF to do that. There are some very sweet multi-file uploaders that are available for jQuery. I mean, gorgeous, drag and drop, show you the loading, brilliant. Two problems. One, Internet Explorer, and the other is the XPage server itself, because it is it's not impossible, but it's not as simple as you would want it to be able to upload the files in a stream continuously, one after the other. But Julian does have an example. Like I say, it's on OpenNTF, but to get a non-Flash based visual indication of how much of the file is uploaded, you need HTML5. So you're looking at IE9 if you're lucky, probably IE10. It really comes down to the plugin and which browsers are supported by it. jQuery itself doesn't do that, but multiple people have used jQuery to build a plugin to do that.
Okay, thanks, Marky. Well, we had a number of questions on jQuery and mobile, and being that wasn't really the focus of your talk today, I'm going to kind of table those, everyone, for maybe we'll do a future session with either Marky or somebody else on jQuery and mobile and XPages. But, you know, we didn't really talk about that today, so I don't think getting into those questions would be appropriate, if you agree, Mark.
Yeah, I do. I see the one question about OSGI deployment of jQuery. Again, on OpenNTF, there is a project there by Declan Lynch, who provides the OSGI files for, I think, 1.7. I think. If you look on OpenNTF, it's out there. So then basically, just like the extension library, what you would do is you would install the OSGI on your server, and then you install it into your designer client, and then you drag and drop it onto this page, or on your XPage itself, and this XPage now has all the jQuery files that it needs. that is one way of using it, certainly.
Okay, good. Thanks. That's good to know. And while we're talking about OpenNTF, we had a question, and I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not, but can you submit custom control to OpenNTF as a project that contained jQuery code? Are you aware of that or not?
Yes, you can. I already have done.
Okay, good.
Yes, I've got 2 OpenNTF projects that both contain jQuery. Because it's licensed under MIT, that's one of the licenses that are accepted by the IP manager at OpenNTF. So yes, you can. And actually, if you look, there are multiple people who have actually published multiple custom controls containing jQuery on there. There's XGrid, there is Galleria. Actually, somebody turned that into a custom control, Patrick. And there's, and my mind's gone blank. But there are certainly multiple jQuery ones on there. So yes, no problems with that.
Okay, we're getting near the end. I think maybe we'll take 2 more. We have one from Brian. In terms of a graphing plugin, is there any one particular one you would suggest that's easy to set up?
They're all about as easy or as hard to set up. The one thing I would say is use the REST service in the extension library to provide JSON data. That's the easiest way to get it to the plugin. jQplot is a very nice, very free library that I've used, but it doesn't have every possible chart. So if you want a gauge, for example, Kendo UI, although it's not free, provides a very nice looking gauge. The new version of HighCharts 3, very nice looking gauge. jQplot doesn't have a gauge. So, you know, it kind of comes down to your requirements as well. But for the most part, all the charts are very similar in that you have to build up, this is the chart type I want, this is the access words, there's my data, please draw it. None of them are really harder or easier than any of the others to use in that sense.
Okay, thanks. Paul, do you have one last question?
We have one more question. How would you suggest sharing your jQuery resources and plugins between databases?
Well, another option we haven't discussed in a sense is that you could have, if you know that you're going to have the plugin used in multiple places, then it would make sense to either have the plugin itself in one central jQuery plugin database that every other application referenced, or putting it on the server. So instead of when you add it to the page and you say, you know, sources JavaScript, JS/jQuery, whatever, then you just have it in a central resource where not only does it become cached, so it's quicker for the users to load, but also each individual application then doesn't have to carry all the code in it for itself. That's just really resource allocation, you know, that you'd apply to any kind of application development plan for the server.
Okay, well, Mark, let me start off by saying thank you for a very informative look at jQuery. Howard, would you like to, I think we're done here.
Yes, thanks, Mark, for a great presentation. We'll get a link to the recording and to the slides out later in the week. And I'd like to thank everyone for attending today, and have a great rest of your day or evening. Colleen, did you have any final words?
Nothing that hasn't been said. So the recording will go out in a couple of days in an email, and thank you everyone for joining.
All right, everyone have a great day.
All right, thanks everybody.
Thanks, guys.